safety strategy at all close to dealing with the problem of crime and farm killings? Well, let's speak to KwaZulu-Natal's Agricultural Union CEO, Sandy La Marque. Sandy, good evening and thank you so much for your time. Talk to us about the strategy. Does it adequately respond to the violence, especially that we also see on farms?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I believe that the strategy is a tool that will enable us to address the crime, the rural conflict that we see taking place, but there needs to be far more actual implementation of the National Rural Strategy. And I think that's where we need to work far more closely together as stakeholders to see how we can implement that, because no doubt there are shortcomings in that strategy.
Do you get a sense that the violence that is being experienced on farms is starkly different to what the violence in communities around farms and in farming areas are also generally exposed to?
Look, I think crime in rural areas is at a level that is unacceptable. And I think that the resources that we see being applied to those areas don't necessarily match the level of crime that is taking place. So we need to deal with it on a holistic nature. And I think that is where we as an organization have always said that we need to work together and work through our provincial structures, through our local structures to bring a collective action into play.
Where do you think some of the biggest hindrances have been in allocating resources to these kind of crimes?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think manpower is obviously a major challenge, and we know that there is a high level of crime in our country. We have seen through lockdown, and particularly going into the most recent level, that there's been a severe impact on manpower, on resources. We know that there's a lot of tension out in many of our urban and obviously our rural areas where we're coming from, and it's difficult to actually take control of that. And that's why we're saying we need to revisit the manpower that is allocated to those areas, the resources that are allocated to those areas, because there's a clear lack of vehicles, for example, or IT equipment, or whatever it is, the actual resources that enable those people to conduct the investigations that need to be conducted.
Sure, and one gets a sense of neglect too when it comes to rural communities. You just take these farm murders that have taken place in Umthwalume as a classic example of communities reporting violence on an ongoing basis, but there simply being very little follow-up to those concerns. What then do you think is the power that you, as representatives of different organizations, that you have in trying to ensure that the state does what it is obligated to do under law?
Certainly, and I think that's where the community forums working together at a local level is absolutely critical. Look, there's no job that I think anyone can do on their own. And I think for far too long we've seen silo mentality where we don't necessarily work together, work collectively on plans and operations that will bring everyone together and unite us in that approach, in that fight against crime at the end of the day. So, you know, again, I come back to say it is absolutely critical we do that. And we've seen it work in the past. We've worked very closely with our provincial structures, and over the years we've managed to bring down particularly the farm attacks and farm murders. But as I said, in the last few months with the lockdown being lifted, we've seen a dramatic increase. So collective action is critical, and it starts at home in the local community.
Sandy La Marque, let me thank you for your time. She's the CEO of the KwaZulu-Natal Agricultural Union.